Hello all, Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures for some tag time. I've pulled out a couple of tags that I think were probably made during the Simple Summer Stencils series. I'm not sure anymore. But yeah, they sort of balance each other really nicely. There's a dark and a light, so that means I can play with balancing and contrasting and all those things I enjoy about the visual poetry of repetition and variation. I think there'll have to be a full class on that sometime, but you must be gleaning the idea by now. And I've pulled out one of my favourite Tim Holtz stamps, this one here from Architecture. This one's great as well, but this is the one that really makes me excited quite often when I work with it. And I'm thinking I'm going to put it on here in white embossing, and I'm going to put it on here in the primary bark, which is about as close as I'll ever go to black probably, and that's gonna be, yeah, a compare and contrast. And I've pulled out some other things that I may or may not use, things that sort of caught my attention as I wandered around the craft room picking things up a little bit. There's chaos going on here at the moment because I'm in the middle of, as often, a very busy time. So yeah, I think it's probably going to go down this side, so that we leave these nice Gothic crosses going on up here, which means on this side it's going here. That's all good. Yeah, and as always, when you're embossing, using embossing powder other than clear embossing powder, or the embossing glazes, where it makes a difference what colour you stamp with underneath. If you're stamping and using opaque embossing powders, which both of these are, both the bright white and the primary bark, it really doesn't matter what colour you stamp with underneath. This is a very fine detail stamp, so although I want something nice and juicy ink wise, I don't want it too juicy. So a number of you have noticed as I've been doing these in videos, including some embossing powder, that I tend not to use an embossing ink pad, and that's partly because I very often work with fine detail stamps, and I find the embossing ink is really kind of sticky and gloopy. Now if this is going this side, I'm going to come back to the gloopiness in a second. I don't want this sort of straight line coming down the middle of the tag here, so I'm just going to wipe away so that we get a more random edging along here. I don't want a straight line completely. I mean, it's going to be slightly straight because we've got columns and beautiful things like that going on. So let's put you here, and I want a partial, really. What am I stamping in? Speckled Egg Archival. So as I say, the colour shouldn't matter. I hope I've got enough. Yes, I have. See how subtle? And then what you want to do is get the embossing powder on sharpish. Make sure you've got the right one that you're planning to put on. That's the white. And down it goes. And you can see already that's going to be a grand image on there. Partial stamping, as is my wont. Oh, don't do that, white embossing powder. Rescued. Shall we? I'll maybe stamp the other one straight away, and then I can heat emboss them both while I pause the camera, so you don't have to listen to the heat embossing happening. You've had that in a number of videos now. Where's my ink gone? There it is. So on this side, we can really sort of trail down a little more gradually. And again, I don't want a completely straight line probably. But what one can always do is, when I'm stamping with a really pale ink, which is the other reason I sort of did this, if there is a bit where I don't want that part of the image so prominent, once I've got the powder on, I can sort of knock that powder off, and then that bit of the image, because it's in such pale ink, will not spring to the eye in quite the same way as where it's in either white or the primary bark. Again, nice, enjoying that. Let's make sure I've got the right powder. Don't knock all the powder off that one. Yes, that's the bark. And that goes through there. It's maybe a moment to show you exactly what I mean about knocking off the powder where we don't want it, except, yeah, that's quite a nice trail down there. Let's get the powder back in the pot. So I'm just going to have a look at this and just see if I want to knock it back. What I might do is stamp a little bit more white down here, just a random column, because I do quite like the drift of that down there. I was trying to preserve some more of these, but they are quite nicely preserved under there. But I'm going to heat emboss that first and then do that extra bit of stamping. So out with the heat tool and I'll be back in a sec. So they're embossed, and as I say, I'm going to try and fool the eye into thinking there's a joined up thing here. I'm going to try and get a little bit of extra stamping at the top here, and I'm going to try and get a little bit of extra stamping down here. This won't be perfect, but I don't mind. So let's just check where it is I need the ink. If that's going there, I want a little bit of extra ink going over the top of the window here. So I want to ink this bit, and I want to, well, maybe I'll do it in two separate things. Except then the ink is going to dry, isn't it? So if that's there, then I'm going to steal this column to go here, because I think that's going to be quite nice, and it'll give me a nice randomness. So that's, oh, sorry, that's stamping down this side of the window for a cheat and making sure I've got ink over the top of the window. I'm not going to try and do it in one go because it's going in different places. So this is just going to extend our stamping a little bit in this direction. So rather than being on the plate now, I'm just adding kind of by hand, as it were. I'll get that approximately lined up, but what I want is a little bit of this stuff up there. And let's get some powder on that and see what it gives us. Not the black, I mean, not the primary bark, but the white. There we go. So I've just got a little bit of extra stuff, and it's not going to show. And here's a chance to show you what I mean about knocking it back if you don't want that completely straight line up there. So I'm just going to take a little brush. I would usually do this over the bin because I don't want to put sticky embossing powder back in my... And I'm just going to soften that line, tap that off. And because I've stamped in the speckled egg, you're really not going to notice that. That's better. Just didn't want that straight line going on there. So let's get that embossed so that it doesn't vanish on us. Our careful additional stamping. There are going to be other things over the top of this. I've got, as you can see, some dried seed heads on the table. I've got some moss. I'm wondering about those little silhouette birds that I think may have been part of the same session. No, they're a different session because they've got the harlequin on, haven't they? Not the Gothic arch. There we go. So in terms of a balancing act, that's now really quite pleasing to the eye already. It's almost completing the arch. And of course, if I swap them over, then I've got a lot more distance between the two arches, and that's also quite pleasurable. Let's have a look. I've got, you may remember the stony work we did with texture paste and stuff. This one, I believe, is actually done with an embossing folder. So that's dry embossing as opposed to heat embossing. With an embossing folder, yes, because look, you can see the imprint on the back. And then just sort of crayony things like we did over our stony textures. And I just wondered whether that's quite nice as a stony base down the bottom here, or maybe it's a bit of moss. Oh yes, don't want a lot of it, so maybe I can split that in half and use half on one side and half on the other. And out of that we'll have some of these little poppy seed stems growing. You've seen these on the altered fish tin, various sizes according to whether the poppies were too close together or not. Now the question here is, do we go up the side where the window is, or do we go up the side away from the window and build things growing towards it? That's three very similar size. I think I like them growing in that direction, in which case that means the moss is going to sort of do that rather than the reverse. And the moss here is going to do that. Let's have you do that and that. I'm going to need another poppy stem, a reasonable sized one. Occasional poppy seeds still falling out. It's fine. And then I've got this one. I have no idea what this is. It's on my little woodland walk, so I don't know what plant it is. And I only take the stems that are either completely dried and seeds have gone out of them, or stems that are broken off, because I want the wood to keep growing it for me. So it's no good stealing all its seeds. Don't think I need that little one down there. I think that's quite a nice spray of stuff to go with those poppies. I just need to grab another slightly larger poppy seed head, but let's have a little look at whether we want, if we do want him, I think I want that one looking that way, so he's looking up towards the window. That's quite nice. What about you? Are you going hunting? Something? That's quite nice. Let's have a look at the other one that's there. This trio. Come on. They're both looking in that direction, and that doesn't make me happy because they're too similar to one another. So I'm going to leave those on there while I go to get a poppy seed head, because when I come back I'll look at it and hopefully I'll know whether I want those birds there or not. Off to fetch another poppy. Back in a sec. There we go, poppy seed head number 3. And I've got myself a slightly larger one again. This is rough at the back. I'm enjoying those birds. I like the lighter highlight. I've also got these clock cabochons, which are little vintage clocks, and they're stuck on the back of a glass pebble. Or we could make some of our own, couldn't we, with book page kind of things, with some of our glass pebbles. I'm just wondering whether that's a nice thing. Time, architecture, decay, ruin. It's 2 different clock heads here. I think I am quite enjoying that. I bought these, as you can see, in bulk because I knew I was going to love them. I love their light catching qualities. I love their dimension. I love the story of time passing and slipping away from us, and making sure we make the most of it. Days and weeks and months and years. That's shaping up quite nicely. I think I might need to do some gluing down. I'm wondering if I want any labely kind of things. We've got our vintage labels, including some of my hand stamped ones that are still in here. I'm wondering if there might be a couple of those involved. Let's snip them so that we've got them as an option. And again, that's just giving us slightly interesting little highlights. And I've got some other detail stamps hanging around that I'm wondering whether I want involved or not. That will probably have to be related to the clocks, because it's got to be related to something. And then we're starting to cover up maybe a bit too much. No, I do quite like that. What about a couple of snippets? I like the snippets as well. That's a nice snippet. What else have we got here? I think something with sort of slightly small detail writing. It's no use having those big chunky ones. That's a bit too similar in colour. Oh, it's quite good over there. So that darker clock face is working against this, and the lighter clock face against that warmer toned background. It's just noticing these things. These are not snippets. These are cut up from some other design paper, and they're actually quite good because they've got really tiny writing that goes right to the edges, which I quite like. So let's just try the colour of that on there. Yep. And I love the font on that one. I'll go in a little bit so that you can see the details on these now. Forgive the wobble. And then it probably wants something, maybe can that reflect that colour over there? Oh, I'll get a few of these out just so that I've got them to see whether they help me or not. There's a couple of darker ones. Okay, so I want a little balancing act like that. And there's a couple more of the hand stamped ones, so maybe we'll get those out and snip those as well. so that we've got a nice combination of the two. Snip, 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 snip. Yeah, I think the birds are going to make the cut. Still not quite sure about the labels. We'll see where we go. So yeah, I think what I'll do is glue a bit of this down because it's all just rolling around a little bit too much at the moment. Let's start with the moss. Don't need that little bit. And let's just get that down onto the bottom of the tag to give us our grassy base. And I really am sort of thinking ruined churchyards. A little bit of nature creeping back in after humans have abandoned the place. That's nice. And that's got a lovely kind of drifting away quality at this end. And I'm just looking at the bit I pulled off the other one and thinking if I tuck this on here, that's going to drift all the way across the tag. So making the most of the bits of decorative moss we've got. There it goes. And into that, I just want to tuck these poppy stems. So I need to decide sort of how tall-ish I want them. I think we'll get rid of this curve because that's going to be a little bit annoying. Or not annoying, difficult to deal with, difficult to get it to go where I want it to go. That one like so. That's going to be somewhere there. And then one a little shorter, maybe coming up the middle. So, somewhere there. Oh, hello. So as always with natural elements, you sort of have to let them tell you where they're going to go. Because if I try to force these, that's when they're going to snap. I have to accept their offer. Maybe you will be better over here, in which case we'll use this big one over here. I'll keep it quite tall for now. You can always cut it shorter. Bit difficult to cut it longer. Yes, see, that's quite nice. Quite like that overlapping and that twisting round. You're nice and tall, so let's keep you tall for a minute and let you sit there, see if that makes me happy. And you're very short. You just were a short stem, but that's kind of fine. Clock, let's see. I do want you all a little bit further that way. There's some more poppy seeds. I've been keeping the poppy seeds to plant, but I think those might just be a step too far. 3 poppy seeds. So let's have this stem and just see how long we want those. And they give a beautiful dimension because they just stick up deliciously. So if you go sort of like that, or if you were this side, you would do that, which is also quite nice. That would put you there. Yeah, that's good. I like that coming across. Good. Let's work on that basis. Let's trim that. Do we want it taller? Actually, maybe we do. Yeah, so we'll leave that length. Let's get these poppy seed heads down. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop a little bit of my sticky gloopy cream cheesy glue under their heads. And then I can put just a little bit of the fine applicator glue under the stems once they're sort of... The joy of this cream cheese glue is that it stays put pretty much immediately. That's not going anywhere. I may have put that on the wrong side of that poppy seed head. Oh no, that's pretty good. I've no longer got my overlapping, but because I've got these to come, so now it's just seeing. So I'm going to put a little bit of this down here under the 3 stems that they can just sit into. So that's a little puddle of glue that I'm just going to maneuver those 3 stems to sit in, and then a little bit of moss over the top to disguise what's going on there. That's nice. Let's have a look at you again. Up here, down a bit lower so that you get your own place to play. Down a bit lower. So that off. This one I'm going to put a little bit down on the base of the stem here, And then I'm just going to try and catch the ones that are sitting back against the tag. It won't be a perfect glue job. It'll need some love and care and not manhandling around the craft room. But that's giving me quite a nice positioning. Maybe a little lower, and then I can trim that off at the bottom. That, of course, is where I put the glue. Okay, let's see where else it's making contact with things. So it's making contact with this stem here. So let's just put a little bit of glue there. That'll help it. It is this one here. That's got a little bit of glue on, but let's just help it. Grand. And then leave it alone for a minute while I do the other. That's the key. That's the real key. Oh, look, he's going to disguise it nicely, isn't he? That's lovely, him sitting forward. So he's partly sitting forward because he's on the stems. So I will put a little supporting piece behind his head when I glue him. So just thinking about you sitting forwards here. Yeah. Oh, it's good. It's good. It just made me happy. It just gave me that little leap of pleasure. What did I just do with my coffee stirrer applicator? Did I just throw it in the bin? Oh no, it's sitting in the glue pot. So efficient, I mess myself up. Right, let's take you out temporarily. Let's get some glue on the back of you. So it's just a little daub of glue. It will dry clear, so if there's any showing, don't worry. It will take a while to dry, this stuff, because it is quite thick. Oh, now, what was I talking about gloopiness? Oh, the gloopiness of embossing ink. I said I'd come back, and I have. The gloopiness of embossing ink means that you get quite a soft, slightly, I don't want to call it blurry image when you stamp with embossing ink, but there's no doubt that the lines are very thick, which means the reason for that is because they want the embossing ink to hold lots of embossing powder, which is grand if you're doing a nice bold image. But when you've got an image with the fine, oh, don't do that clock, that was deeply unhelpful. I was picking it up to show you the fine lines. When you've got really fine lines on your image like this, or very often when I'm stamping my PaperArtsy quote stamps, if there's too much powder on here and it's a slightly thicker line, juicy stamped line, those fine detail lines are going to start blending into each other when you melt the powder. And so you don't get as much clarity and detail on the image. So yeah, I tend, if it's a very fine detail stamp like this, as you saw, I stamp with Archival inks because that just gives me that extra little bit. I'm working with a puddle of glue down here, and that's enough to already hold those. Oh, they're sticking up beautifully. So again, I can see that it's sort of making contact along this stem here. So I'm just going to help it with some glue to have something to hold on to. Other than that, it's not really holding anywhere except down here. So yeah, when you're using embossing ink, when you're using embossing powder, any kind of moisture will hold the powder. I did mention this the other day. Even water, if you spritz on water, you can sprinkle embossing powder onto that, as long as you do the heating before the water dries, because otherwise the powder will just all blow away. But that moisture is the thing that holds the powder, and then once you've heat embossed it, it'll stay put. So you can stamp with distress inks, which is sort of a happy medium between embossing ink and Archival ink. So it will give you a reasonably fine detail image, but obviously stays moist a lot longer than something like an Archival ink. So you've got a little bit longer to get your powders in place. Good, I need to run away and find something to just elevate these little birds onto. Just some little bits of cardboard, probably. In fact, maybe I've got, lying on the floor as if by magic, a little bit of waste cardboard. So let's do that. I think, is one going to be enough? Let's have a look at, I want them quite small because obviously I don't want them showing underneath the bird. Right, having zoomed in, I realise I'm now off camera for this little bit. Let's go up here. So yeah, I'm just trimming those bits of card so that they're small enough not to show. I think certainly on this one it's 2. So a little bit of glue between the layers, stick that down, and I won't put the glue on the outsides yet because I just want to see if that's enough to hold him. Yes, it will be. So, oh, he's really caught in that moss. So let's put you on here, a little bit of glue that side, little bit of glue that side. Stick it onto the bird's body, like so. So that's already got some glue. I know that he was resting on those stems, so a little bit of glue on there. I don't think it's going to be necessary to glue his foot into the moss, but, you know, we could give it that extra little bit of assistance. And down he goes. Oh, that is cute. Yeah, there's something about the silhouette birds. They do have a sort of character and a personality to them, which is really quite pleasurable. He's spotted something down here he's after, hasn't he? So let's get a couple of these, a new little pile of cardboard. And here we might want a couple of these actually, because he's not going to be resting on the stems. I don't think I want him this far over, do I? Maybe I do. It's clearing a bit too much space. Let's put him back where he was, where he sort of automatically went. Yeah, I think he is a bit further over, which means that I probably want some under the head end. So there-ish. And another set to go further down the body. I need to make these a little smaller because otherwise it's going to stick out under his wing. So let's pop that there, that there, that there, that there. It's a little juggling act. So there we are, nice supported bird who can sit forward of his background, just perched in the moss there. Good. So I need glue on the backs of these. And then again, I might just put a little bit on the tail and on the feet so that, I mean, look, you can see that's moved. That's no good showing under your belly there, bird. There he is. Just again, perched and looking. Tail going down. Let's angle him so he's looking up at the window. Actually, I'm enjoying that just like that. I'll have a look at the clocks and the labels again. But it may all be over. Haven't got any words yet, of course. So there's that. Let's pop you out of the way. Let's have a look at the clocks first of all. That's maybe somewhere there. That's maybe somewhere there. So all that beautiful extra embossing we did is now vanishing. I do like the clocks, but maybe I don't want them quite at the same height as each other. Yeah, I just like that story of time and what happens if we put them in the window. Like, he's looking at the clock now. That's now become annoying that one's only partially there. But maybe we quite like the clock heading over the... That's interesting. I need to look at that for a second. No, I think that's too formulaic. I think that's too easy. Too easy. So let's have you up near that poppy head. Let's have you down near that poppy head. So now what's nice is both those clocks are in relationship with the largest of the poppy heads on their respective tags. So that's quite nice. That really is quite nice. Do we want to have a sort of label game going on around and near the clocks? Let's have a look. Or do we want just to keep this beautiful background we've been busy creating nice and visible? Let's put a little pale one in here. Oh, maybe it's a dark one. A little pale one over here, or maybe it's a dark one. Slightly less dark, obviously. Starting to quite enjoy that now. Maybe what it is find the words before we go too much further, because maybe the words want to be part of this little game. Oh yes, no, I'm enjoying that. Let's glue it down before I change my mind. Yeah, and we'll tuck that so it's a little closer to the clock. But I'm just going to get some glue under here. And what I try to do is I aim to keep the label kind of where I've had it, so that I can continue to build that relationship. Was it you? Yes, it was you. Let's put the clock back. And then, yeah, let's get some glue on that. And you'll notice I'm not putting my glue right to the edges of these labels, in case I want to slide something else under or through or round. I leave the edges just available so that other things could be tucked in if I wanted. So let's try and leave you where we've got you, going right across that window there. Nice. Let's put this clock back. And again, I want to make sure this label comes partially under the clock, so it's got a full relationship with the clock as well. So it's going to be a little further over than it was just now. And as long as I get this on, I've got a little bit of time to move that if it's not quite in the right place, but that looks pretty good to me. There we are. It's delightful. It's delightful. Good. I need to go hunting for some words. Back in a sec. Here we go. I've headed for one of my very earliest quote stamp sets. This is EAB03 Music and Silence, and so all the quotes on here are about silence and music. Music is not in the notes, but in the silence between. That's Mozart. And I'm thinking just a fragment. I don't think this is Rilke, German poet. I want to be with those who know secret things, or else alone. Some of my favourite quotes of all time on here. So I'm thinking just fragments. I don't want a whole quote because that's going to cover up too much. I'm thinking of learn to be silent and be silent and listen. So we've got Pythagoras and Rumi on there. Let's see, where are they in here? There's be silent and listen. I see it. La la la, and learn to be silent, let your quiet mind listen and absorb. Oh, please don't say that that's gone away. It is seriously probably my most used stamp of all. If I've lost it, I'll be very unhappy. Learn to be silent. Thank you, Pythagoras. There you are. Good. So I've got a little offcut of paper here. And what colour shall I stamp in? I think maybe it doesn't want to disrupt things too much. I think just something probably quite subtle, maybe potting soil. And yeah, then I'll be trimming it. So let's see, stamping platform. Let's get you up first. I'll be really surprised if these stick on because, as I say, I have used both of them a great deal. In those early sets, you're really looking at some of the quotes that I've tried to live my life by, because obviously they were the first ones I wanted on stamp sets so that I would have them to play with on crafting projects. And those collected sets, because they're themed, some of my favourite quotes had to wait until later, but on those early sets, see, I knew that one was going to cause trouble. So I need to press it down again and then re-ink because it's now all over my fingers. That's the Pythagoras quote in my fingers. What could be better? You just slid again, didn't you? I saw you. So I've just moistened the back of it to help it to stick to the thing while I stamp it. Grand. So let's take the last line of this one. And the first line of this one. Learn to be silent. Let your quiet mind listen and absorb. Just magic. The inspiration you seek is already within you. Be silent and listen. Both of them magnificent thoughts to take into a world of increasing noise and stress and never giving us a chance to be still, contemplate, be silent and listen. Let's see if that works. Learn to be silent. So again, if this is what I'm talking about, if I were to emboss these, and if I used an embossing ink, that squidgy stamping would mean that these words, when I emboss them, would probably blur to the point where reading them would be a little bit difficult. That's quite nice with him looking at that quote. What about up here? I sort of wanted them in relationship to the clock, so maybe that's useful. Be silent and listen. Learn to be silent. So that they're sort of connected to the labels. That's again a little bit formulaic. Let's try down here. It's just a little bit long to go there, so maybe if we switch them, because that one's shorter, so maybe it comes in relation to the bird, in which case perhaps what we do is ink the edges to match the bird. Learn to be silent and listen. Yeah, I think that might be it. And then we've got the difference between everything quite clustered on this tag and big spaces on this tag. So yeah, I am just going to edge these with something fairly subtle, I think. I'm not going to put any extra ink onto the pad. I'm just going to give it a little, and I might also, when it's stuck down, just go round it. I think I might have trimmed it too close. That one's fine. This one is too close to the words. So these are the things about which I'm a perfectionist. Be silent and listen is on this one, isn't it? That's the roomy. These are the places where my perfectionism kicks in. I embrace imperfection in texture, in positioning, in all those things. But if the words aren't right, you have to put a stop to it. You have to go again. Okay, down here. And this time not to trim too close. Let's get you out, you out. And if I wanted, I've got perfectly good sentences here as well. The inspiration you seek is already within you. I can use on another project. Let your quiet mind listen and absorb. I can also use on another project. So yeah, don't be too quick to throw these things away. The other thing that was really important to me when I was creating these quote sets was to give credit to the writers of those quotes. I am words and pictures. My first life was in the theatre, and writers matter. Knowing who wrote something. I mean, good Lord, these days on the internet, all manner of things are attributed, for instance, to Shakespeare, that he never said anything remotely like. Yeah, don't get me started on that. That's a difficult thing to go down. But yeah, so you don't have to have the name of the writer on every project, because you can, of course, trim it off, as I am doing, and cut their words apart and butcher the poetry and change it to different directions. So I'm just going to clear the decks so that I can have a look at the balance of that before I do the final gluing down and adding the twine. There will almost certainly be, as you'll probably guess, some white spatter to be done, and then we'll zoom in for a little close-up on those. I hope that you have enjoyed a little bit of peace and calm and contemplation today, she said, rattling the plastic of her stamp quotes as she puts them away. Hang around for the close-up, and yeah, those have made me happy. I may in the long run mount them onto some cardboard as well, so that just gives them that lovely solidity that is so enjoyable, as well as just giving us a nice flat surface again. Thanks so much for your company as always. Leave a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this. Any comments or questions down below, I'll try to leave as many details as I can of what's been used today in the description below the video, so do check there. And if you're not subscribed, do join me on this creative journey. I'd love to have your company. Thanks so much for watching, and happy crafting all.